Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Now, first things first, I know I haven't thrown up a couple of new episodes over the last few weeks, and that's because life was lifing pretty hard, and that's okay. That's okay. For those who do not know or who haven't figured it out yet, this is effectively a one-person show. And so when I'm out of commission because of whatever life is throwing at me, then the episodes come out a little slower. But that's okay because it gave me time to make it up to you. You see, today I have a very important, very special guest, someone who's very special to me personally. And you've heard about this person on more than one occasion during the course of this show. And it is my incredible pleasure and true honor to have on this person, my dear friend. Please tell everybody who you are.
Hello, my name is Connor Anderson. I'm an independent filmmaker and Krull nerd. And I have known the professor for many years now, and we've nerded out about this thing for a long time. And it is an honor for me to be here. Man, you're making me blush with that intro. What are you doing?
Because for the things that you also might not know, folks at home, is that Connor and I became fast friends. In fact, we should talk about that in just a moment. We became fast friends. How might people at home know who you are?
In the nerdier spheres of the internet, a decade and some years ago, I made a video about D&D called Roll a D6 that some people liked, and then some other various parody music video things, and just some general internet-y ridiculousness. But apart from that, if you know who I am, I'm surprised, and good for you.
Don't be too shocked. A lot of people, I mean, let's see. It's been a while since I pulled it up. Okay, here is, the channel is called Sir Connor Anderson.
That is correct.
Anderson with an O.
Yes.
And I'm waiting for someone to spell it Anderson. That
Son
way.
of
But
Anders.
anyway,
Oh, yeah.
Son of Anders. And it has 2.6 million views. So yeah, there are 2.6 million potentially distinct individuals out there who know who you are, and there is a chance at least one of them is listening to this show.
Maybe.
So don't be surprised.
I was in college when I made that video, and a few months after it came out, I just, for some reason, I was in the lunch line or at the gym or something, and some girl walked up to me and was like, "Hey, have you seen this video? It's called Roll a D6. You look like that guy." I was like, "Oh, I don't know what that is. I have no idea what that is. That's so weird. I've never seen that. What are you talking about?" She's like, "Oh, you should watch it. You look just like that dude." So I'm sorry about that.
I didn't.
I also I was at Denver Comic-Con a few years later, and I saw a guy wearing a Roll a D6 t-shirt.
Oh.
And so I walked up to him and was like, "Hey, cool shirt, buddy. Can I have a picture with you?" And he was like, "I guess. Why?" Like, he had no idea who I was. And I thought that was really funny. He was so annoyed that I wanted to take a picture with him. It's like my first shirt in the wild. And he didn't care at all. It was great.
Was it just like a generic Roll a D6, or was it actually
it
like
was one of the ones that I sold at that same
one of your
like 2 years before? Yeah. I was like, "Oh, look at that. Somebody's wearing this. That's really funny." But yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
You sent me a couple of those shirts, and I wore them until I couldn't anymore.
Well, I've got a couple more laying around somewhere, so if you need an extra one, let me know.
You're right. You should get me another one of those.
Yeah.
I would absolutely wear it. Now, Roll a D6 was like your most successful video, but it was by far not your only video. You produced a number of things.
Yes. Right after we made that, my thought was, I don't want to do the same thing forever. Let's do something entirely different. And so I made a different thing, and then everybody hated that. So I went back to D&D themed parody videos for a while, and everyone hated those too. So I just do whatever I feel like now. You know, I've made everything from random short comedy films about stoplights to like horror movies and everything in between. So it's just, yeah.
Other than Roll a D6, what's your favorite singular piece that you've put out in the wild?
Ooh, that is a good question, and I hate talking about myself and the things that I've done. So I'm gonna say I really enjoyed. So you were in an episode of a web series called The Heroes of Reason that I made.
Yeah.
Where you played a guy, a physicist.
Good job. I played a guy. Yeah.
I don't know what your character's
Oh.
name was. You were the
You know what's funny?
physicist in the
I was the
episode.
physicist. I don't remember my character name. I just remember I was the physicist.
Yeah. That's gonna drive me crazy. I invented him, and I have no idea what his name is. Anyway, I think that one's pretty fun. That's a very good little piece of just short and swift storytelling. I do like The Closet is pretty funny. It's one. So my buddy Aaron and I got together over the course of like a week 5 or 6 years ago, and we made like 4 or 5 just short films. One of them, First Contact, is pretty good. The Closet is also hilarious, and Stoplight is also pretty funny. But I think The Closet is my favorite of those 3. Although First Contact is also very. I don't know, man. I have no idea. I hate all of my things equally.
But you shouldn't, though, is the point. Because I mean, I'm going to jump in on this because your self-deprecation is adorable, and I hate it. So
too bad. Deal with it, buddy. You asked me the question.
I asked the question. I think the NL might arguably be the greatest thing you've ever made, and just no one knows about it.
That might be the funniest thing I've ever been involved in, and it's not all my fault. Everyone involved in that was hilarious, and I just was there with a camera. But like, that one's pretty good. I think you're right. I haven't thought about any of these movies in a long time. I should go back and watch them now.
You should watch your own stuff. It's pretty good.
Oh, God.
The other thing that you made that I love is Day Zero. Now, Day Zero does not appear in your list of videos.
That is correct. Because first of all, I love the idea that art is temporary. I think, and I don't want to sound like, I'm an artist, I know it. I love the idea that things exist for a short period of time and then are gone.
They're ephemeral.
Right. So for a long time, I would make these things called the Broken Record Christmas Special. And it'd be a 15 or 20-minute movie of sketch comedy related to Christmas that I would upload to YouTube for the single day of Christmas and then delete forever. And I've got like 3 or 4 of those, and they are amazing. The second one has like a whole Dark Knight parody with Batman, and like, oh, it's insane, but they don't exist anymore because you can't watch them, and I love that. And I think Day Zero, I took off the internet because of copyright issues and not for that reason.
Oh,
because I used music from the War of the Worlds for one of the scenes, and then I was like, I'm just going to take it down and replace the music, and then I didn't do that, and now here we are. So.
You know what? You're right. For Christmas, you should get me a Blu-ray disc of everything you've deleted off of the internet, so I have it forever.
I can do that.
So this is me telling people, go to the YouTubes, go to Sir Connor Anderson. That's Connor with 2 N's and Anderson with an O-N at the end. And look at his list of videos. The art that is not yet ephemeral is still available. You should check out Roll a D6 and any other video that looks appealing to you. But I tell you now.
Before I delete it.
Before you delete it.
Forever.
Which ones did you like, Krebs? Okay, hang on.
Let me get rid of what?
What? The NL and Roll a D6. Watch Roll a D6 first, then watch the NL, and everything after that is bonus. And it's your creativity has been held back from the world for too long. I think you need to get back into the swing of things and make some new stuff.
Well, I appreciate your overly kind words, my friend. And I have a few things that I'm cooking up that I would like you to be involved in that we will talk about later off the record.
I would love to bring your vision to life.
Excellent. Thank you, my lord.
All right. So, all silliness aside, well, no, that's impossible with us.
No, we're way too silly.
So Connor, how did you and I first meet?
We met each other through a mutual friend of the Danger Element fame, John Soares, and he, for whatever reason, he and I started talking online, and he wanted me to come help him shoot the last half of the Danger Element, which you were going to be in. I, of course, was already well aware of your work in the Danger Element, and I was somewhat of a fan. And so when he told me that I was going to be the second unit director filming your fight scene with Billiard against my other favorite character, Vorkschnitt, I was like, okay, I can just die happy now. This is insane. This will be great. And so we talked on the phone and talked about, you know, how we're gonna shoot this thing and all these sort of things. And then we actually met in California in November, I think we decided.
November 2011.
2011. And we've just been, I can't get rid of you since then. We've just been stuck together, you know, and it's been
Yeah, I
great.
can't quit you
Every
either.
single hour has been wonderful.
Actually, that's not false. Connor and I have visited each other in our relative states a few times, and
Yeah.
it's a blast every time.
Yeah. I used to make fairly regular drives out to Utah, like a couple times a year for 3 or 4 years in a row. I feel like for a weekend
Yeah.
of just crawling fireworks and whatever else we were doing. That it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, my guest room misses you, my man.
Yeah. I'll be
Um,
there soon.
that sounds great. We should do that. Now we meet each other in 2011. We become fast friends, despite me making a joke completely at your expense in front of everybody. But
Right off the bat.
right off the bat, it was like one of the first conversations we had in person.
I think it was
and
the first thing you
absolutely-
said to me. Like you walked in and you're like, "What makes you think you're so cool?"
it didn't go quite like that. It went like this. So I have this habit. I don't know if you knew this or not, but I like to ask people questions in almost like an interview fashion.
Yeah, that's how you
Right?
ended up here.
That's
Led
how
you
it-
directly
yeah.
to this moment right now.
To exactly where we are.
Yeah.
And but it just, I don't know, it was just something I kind of just started doing organically with people that I wanted to learn more about. I would just start asking them questions. And I sat down next to Connor in John's house. I can't remember if we were doing any planning that day. I think we were just congregating because the next day we were shooting.
Yeah, I think that seems right. It was like, I feel like it was nighttime and you came in like you had just got there and you came over to settle in or something.
I just arrived from an 11-hour car ride.
Yeah.
And I sit down next to Connor, and I had seen Roll a D6 and some of his other stuff. And I also, like, I was instantaneously a Connor Anderson fan, and I very much liked what you were doing. And you already had like hundreds of thousands of views, if not over 1 million by that point. And so I sat down and I was like, so what interested you in filmmaking? And I think I asked like 2 softball
Lead ups. I think you're right. Yeah.
and then I just sat there and I was genuinely listening, and I don't know what possessed me, but I thought it would be really funny to then ask a question using the worst wording possible, even though I personally already held you in high esteem. And we had, remember, this is our first conversation in person. We'd only just met. And I looked at him just dead in the eye and I go, what in the universe gave you any inclination that you were any good at this?
Yeah.
and everyone in the room starts dying. And I think it was twofold. One, they know who I am as a person. They know that I'm not like that, right?
Yeah.
And so when they heard me say that, it was completely unexpected. And the second thing is, it was the rudest possible way to ask about your passion.
That's so funny.
And
I don't remember what I said.
well.
I don't know what my response was. I feel
For
like
a
it
moment,
was.
you laughed and your cheeks were red and you were silent for just a minute.
Yeah.
And then I think I apologized. And that's how
I'll
we
think about
that's
it.
how we became brothers.
Friends
there
ever
on the spot.
since. Yeah.
Friends ever since.
Yeah.
I want you to know that I spent, if not the rest of the trip, definitely at least the next couple hours trying to make it up to you.
Just panicking, like, oh, he's gonna hate me now.
I was like, okay, that was funny, but at what cost? And like, I was worried that I had just burned a bridge.
Have I ruined this?
No,
That's why we're friends.
That's why we're friends. So that's how we met. And then one of your visits, you came to Utah, and you and I went out for sushi at one of my favorite sushi places.
Yes, we did.
And I think you know where this is going.
I sure do.
Okay, so tell the people at home. I've told them parts of my recollection of this experience. What do you remember about us sitting down to sushi in Utah when all of a sudden?
So I remember, I think I'm going to derail your story for a second because I'm fairly confident that sushi date, for lack of a better word, was
a mandate.
It's when you gave me this Atari game. So,
that's possible.
You already knew that we both were already on the Krull team. So like we were there to talk about Krull, and you had like a Krull gift for me, and we were just all in. So I don't know when it came up the first time, because I think it was before that.
So you came to Utah. It was the time that we discovered a firework called the Power.
Yes.
And during that trip,
Like 15 shotguns in a box, if I
it
recall.
was,
Yeah.
I think it was only 8 shots, but the first time
Yeah.
we lit it, it was like a shotgun went off.
Poof.
We had no idea what we were getting
Yeah,
into, and it
that
was
was a
fantastic.
surprise, yeah.
But the reason it was that trip was because I believe you and I had talked about Krull. I forget how we ever brought it up,
Mhm.
but you brought the soundtrack on
Yes,
vinyl,
that's correct.
and then we I think that was the first time we watched the movie together.
I think so.
And then you
On
told me about
Blu-ray.
your first time. Yeah,
Oh,
well,
it might have been
I mean,
DVD at
no,
that
it was
point. I
just
think
DVD. It was just
you're
DVD.
right. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Blu-ray would happen later.
That's correct.
So you came up on a visit. We discovered a new firework. We talked about Krull, and we had the vinyl. And I think we watched the movie that trip. Then we parted ways. A year or two passes. You come back into town, and we have this event where we go out to sushi. And I had forgotten that that's when I gave you the Atari game, which for folks who can't see the video, because this is a podcast in some regions of the world, there is an Atari game in the box. Is it still in the shrink?
It is not shrinked, but it's still in the box, sitting
It's
right
in
there
the
on my
box.
shelf.
It's a bit sun faded, but
Yeah,
my options were limited.
it's still great.
But he has the full Atari box game and instruction manual over his left shoulder
That is
in the
correct.
background.
That is correct. For those of you at home, my
Those
wall
of
is
you,
covered with Krull logos in various forms.
as
Uh,
well as should be.
yeah, no, we got together, we went out for sushi, and we just talked Krull, and that led us into huge, like, lore deep dives, and because we're both film nerds, what we would do if we were to make the movie again. And it was probably the best, like, 3 hours of conversation. We walked around downtown Salt Lake for, I feel like, a couple hours even after that. We just wandered and talked about Krull, and it was phenomenal. I remember nothing about the city. Just Krull. That whole trip is sushi and Krull, and that's perfect.
So, what do you remember, like in that conversation? What were some of the highlights that stick out in your mind to this day?
I remember talking about how the glaive got into the mountain at the highest peak. I remember talking about uh, the slayers and how their different armor has different horns for, like, versus, like, the tiers of how important the slayers are and how their weapons. We designed, like, a new slayer weapon, like a cool, like, curved on the hand sword. We talked about Inir and the old Lissa a little bit. I just, most of that time I spent thinking, man, I can't wait to make this movie and watch you be Colwyn. Like that, like most of that was like, we're gonna remake this. You're gonna be Colwyn. It's gonna be fantastic. It's gonna be great. That was, man, that was a good day.
What a time to be alive!
What a time to be alive.
Oh man, at that time maybe I could have pulled the truth is I don't think I was ever fit to be Colwyn. I think you would have made a better Colwyn than I would have made a Colwyn.
I would have preferred to
Um,
be a Rel or a Torquil or a.
you would make a killer Torquil. You really would. Um, so we had this big conversation, and my recollection is as we're sitting down, just nerding out a little bit about Kroll, like we were just enjoying our conversation.
Mhm.
The first thing that I think kind of sparked the fire was we started asking analytical questions, and the first question was, Ynir says this it was given me to know. And it's like, okay, so we understand that he's a seer, but where did that knowledge come from? How does he know this? And then I don't know if we came up with a satisfactory answer, but then the very next thing was I seem to remember I had a flash moment where I was like, wait a second, the prophecy, hang on. And then I started like repeating the prophecy the best I could from memory, and we started dissecting it.
Mhm.
And then we had some like newfound sort of like, I never thought of it that way before moments, you know?
Yeah. The idea that Inir and Lissa had tried to fulfill the prophecy previously and failed, I think came out of that conversation, if I'm not
It did.
mistaken. And I think that alone is a phenomenal, just, how many times has the beast tried to invade this place? If he has, how many times has this prophecy failed before now? Like, Inir knows where the glaive is. I mean, he put it there, right? Like, he must have known that it got up there somehow.
He knows it's like he knew without a doubt where it
Yeah,
was located.
exactly
And the
where it
question
was.
becomes, how does he know exactly where it is? And
Right.
again, I think it's really easy for people to say, well, he's a seer.
Right.
And it's
Is he?
obvious,
Is he
but
though? He's only referred to as the Old One. There's only
he's
one seer in the film. That's the Emerald Seer.
yeah, see
Technically
that
speaking,
well, the widow is also a seer.
true, but they don't refer to her as a seer. So
That's true, they don't.
she just knows stuff. But
But it
she
is
would
her
be a
power,
seer
right?
technically. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, she
Because
has
it was
some
given
power.
her to know.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? Like what's interesting is that you have at least 3 people in this film, actually 4 now that I think about it. 4 that are given knowledge that is distinct and separate from each other,
Yes.
right? And that would be Ynir, the widow is capable of some sort of foresight when she
Mhm.
wants to, right? The Emerald Seer and Rel.
Yes.
Rel's the only other person with some sort of foreknowledge that nobody else has, right?
Correct.
And despite it being personal, I still think it counts. Um, and so you and I, so to that point, just because I would consider like Ynir knew by certain signs or by knowledge or whatever the case may be,
Mhm.
he knew it was time to descend the mountains
To
and
come
come
down.
find the new king,
Yeah.
right? When he came down from the mountains, Rel said, "When I heard that the ancient one, does he call him the ancient one or just the old
The
one?"
old one. He says, I believe, when I learned that the old one had come down, I knew that the time had come.
I knew that the time
The
had come,
time had come.
right? Now, here's something else that I think there are so many statements in Krull that just get made by
Yeah.
characters, and then we just take it as exposition and we
Right.
move on as an audience.
Check. Let's
But
go.
then,
Yeah.
but if you stop and think about it, you're like, oh my gosh, what are the implications of that,
Yes.
right?
That sentence alone, we could talk about that for an hour.
Yes, and
Okay.
I think we
So,
did.
so Rel learned the old one had come down. So he knew the time had come. What time?
Yeah,
His
he says
time,
the
right?
time, right?
The
Well,
time.
that's kind of what I was getting from it too. Is like this is
Yeah.
the start of the end. It's the
This is
beginning of the
where
end.
I have to go, which means that Rel, being a Cyclops, not from Krull, came to Krull to fulfill his destiny of dying on Krull after the old one had come down.
Right? And I'm going to jump back to that in just a second because
Yes,
there's Rel is the most surprising bag of story hooks
absolutely.
in all of Krull, in my
Just the
opinion.
like loose lore of how the Cyclops exist is like, wow, that's a whole thing.
That's a
That's a whole
whole
thing.
thing. It's a whole
Yeah.
thing. And but he said I knew the time had come, and then later on Titch very just offhandedly as he's talking to Ergo says um that's his name is Rel, and then he said something to the effect of he used to visit the seer often and they would talk,
Yeah, he doesn't
and
speak much. He'd visit the
he
seer
doesn't speak
sometimes.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He
Yeah.
doesn't speak much. He visits the seer sometimes, and I'm like, okay, so that means he's visited the seer more than once, probably more than twice.
Right.
What
Sometimes.
do what do they talk about, and how
Yeah.
does Rel know where the seer is?
Yes, that's a very hidden piece of information that only Ynir maybe knows. But the Cyclops too now?
I would
Why?
super explore the story of how Rel and the Emerald Seer become friends,
Yeah.
and I would beg the question, how long have they been friends? Because we don't know how a Cyclops ages.
Right.
We don't
Probably a
know.
long time.
But I wager that in those conversations, the Emerald Seer, maybe not, remember the Emerald Seer and Rel are both foreseers of the future. They both have vision that is different from each other.
Mhm.
I think Rel sees the future, a very specific future, his own, right? But the Emerald Seer has the ability he has more like the gift of insight, right? He has sort of like extrasensory vision. So I'm sure they shared information with each other back and forth, but the Emerald Seer in his wisdom, I think, told Rel more about what to look for, like what are the signs, or you have to understand that this prophecy is in play, or the fate of Krull is on this fulcrum. And like
Mhm.
I want to say they played Krullian chess. They, maybe Rel helped with the goats, and
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know. Maybe he's wearing one of the goats now that I think about it.
Yeah.
But no matter how you slice it, I think the Emerald Seer played a role in Rel knowing where he needed to be and when, in order to like fulfill his own ending. as it were, right?
Absolutely. And I would think that the Emerald Seer is the one who told Rel that the old one had come down from the mountains to begin with.
Yeah, because that was my next question: is how did Rel find out? They don't
Yeah.
have, they don't have the interwebs. It wasn't
No.
broadly, but Rel
Ynir's
is
tweeting,
also
going back to the city, lol. Let's get sushi. Yeah.
I'm an uptown girl
Out of the
and
mountains now.
out of the mountains, straight out of granite.
Yeah.
But it's also, it's also possible Rel was following Ynir and Colwyn and Ergo
From
for
the
some
beginning.
time, right? Yeah, he's like, because Colwyn's like, you've been following us for a while now, and Rel says
from the beginning. So then the question is, from
since the beginning,
whose beginning, right?
Yeah. So
Since Ynir came down.
Yeah, like when Ynir also at the very start of the movie, we hear the prophecy and all that stuff, and then we see the Slayers coming through, and he's like, "This was given me to know that the beast would invade our world, the world of Krull, and that his Slayers would ravage the countryside, and blah blah blah." Right?
Yeah.
And then we see the Slayers running through what looks like the woods to me, and there's Ynir just on the sideline, hanging on to a fallen tree and thinking about the implications of what this means.
Yeah.
And then it's after that we hear, but there's one thing I cannot know, whether the prophecy be true. Now, isn't that, oh my gosh, I'm having like a brand new moment now. Because you and I both hold on to the headcanon, which by the way, is gently supported by the book and by the CD liner notes, that Ynir and Lissa potentially were the original fulfillers of the prophecy. What an interesting thing for him to say, if that's true. If you hold on to that headcanon, it doesn't ruin anything in the movie. So I feel like this is headcanon that works.
Yeah.
If you hold on to that headcanon, now you have someone who almost fulfilled the prophecy and failed, and now he has a crisis of faith. But one thing I cannot know, whether the prophecy be true.
Yeah.
Because if it's not true, then he's really not at fault.
Right.
But if it is true, what does that mean about him?
And the idea of like, man. So the fact that he's setting these people up to fulfill this prophecy, knowing it could not even happen, is just still great. And how many times has Ynir tried to lead someone through the prophecy just to watch it fail?
Thank you so very much for listening to this episode of the Krulltimate Podcast. Now, I would like to hear from you. If you have any questions, curiosities, or comments that you would like to make about this or other episodes, you can send them to thekrulltimatefandom@gmail.com. Until next time, I have been your host, Professor Krebs, and this is the Krulltimate Podcast.